Hello students, today we will be discussing about achievement processes that are associated with the students in the classroom. You all know that unless a child has a motivation to come to the class, the child cannot excel in his studies. So what are the factors that influence this kind of an achievement processes in the students? So in this module, we will be discussing about intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, mastery motivation and mindset. Because this achievement process is a very broader term and number of factors are associated in this, we will be discussing this module as two parts. So in this part we will focus on some of the concepts and that other parts will continue in the second part. So before proceeding to the module, can you help me to understand or to know to what extent you are familiar with the concept motivation? So what is motivation? Motivation is a force which will help you to energize and then to provide you some kind of an action and then sustain that kind of an action. So motivation is a critical aspect of teaching and learning. Unmotivated students, definitely they will not have any kind of an effort in order to learn. So motivation involves the process that energize, direct and sustain the behavior. To understand this motivation, different psychologists gave different perspectives. Now let us see what are those different perspectives. All of you are familiar with these perspectives. Behavioral perspective. What does the behavioral perspective say? It emphasizes that external rewards and punishments are very much important in determining the student's motivation. When we say incentives, incentives can be positive or intensive can be negative stimuli or events that can motivate a student's behavior. So behavioristic perspectives, they emphasized on incentives. They said they will add more interest. When we are giving an incentive, that will add interest or excitement to the class and that will direct attention towards the appropriate behavior and away from the inappropriate behavior. So incentives that classroom teachers can include are numerical scores. All of you are familiar, right? The moment we say marks are there for a particular task, everyone wants to complete the task because that is the motivation. So that will give you the feedback about the quality of the student's work and they also act as check marks or stars for competently completing the work. So apart from this, other incentives could be students' recognition. Another type of incentive focuses on allowing the students to do something special like playing computer games or going on a field trip as a reward for good work. So the behavioristic perspective says rewards or incentives play an important role. Similarly, the punishments. Now, when we see the humanistic perspective, the humanistic perspective emphasizes students' capacity for personal growth, freedom to choose their own destiny and positive qualities like being sensitive to others. This perspective is closely associated with Abraham Maslow's belief that certain basic needs must be met before higher needs can be satisfied. All of you have studied in the personality theories the hierarchy of needs postulated by Maslow. So the first basic needs must be satisfied, only then we go up in the ladder. So what are those basic needs? The basic needs, the first needs are physiological needs, that is hunger, thirst, sleep. The second one is the safety needs. You should be assured of your survival, that you are protected from war, crime and other natural calamities. Then third one is the love and belongingness. As human beings, all of us need the feelings of security, affection and attention from others. And once these needs are fulfilled, people aim at self-esteem needs, that is feeling good about oneself based upon their achievements. And the last and most important top need is the self-actualization, which refers to the realization of one's potential. So some children who come from poor or abusive homes are less likely to achieve in school than children whose basic needs are met. This is as per the hierarchy that is postulated by Maslow. But we are not agreeing with Maslow's ordering of the motives. because just now I said for some students cognitive needs might be more important, more fundamental than esteem needs, or other students might meet their cognitive needs even though they have not experienced love and belongingness. So, there will be variations among the individuals. Now, coming to the cognitive perspective. What is the cognitive perspective on motivation? That is, how the students' thoughts will be influencing their motivation levels. So, thoughts play a vital role in determining our actions. In recent years, there has been a tremendous research in this perspective, focusing on concepts like students' internal motivation to achieve their attributions, that is, how they are perceiving the causes for their success or failure, and especially the perception that effort is an important factor in achievement, and their beliefs whether they can effectively control their environment or not. So, this cognitive perspective emphasizes the importance of goal setting, planning and monitoring progress toward a goal. So, when the behavioral perspective perceives the student's motivation as a consequence of external incentives, the cognitive perspective considers that external pressures should be de-emphasized. Students should be given more opportunities and responsibility for controlling their own achievement outcomes according to the cognitive perspective. The cognitive perspective on motivation fits with the ideas of R. W. White, who proposed the concept of competence motivation. The idea that people are motivated to deal effectively with their environment, to master their world and to process information efficiently. He said that people do these things because they are internally motivated to effectively interact with the environment. Then what is the social perspective? Are you the kind of a person who is motivated to be around the people a lot, or would you rather stay home and read a book? So, the need for affiliation or relatedness is the motive here to connect with the other people. This involves establishing, maintaining and restoring warm, close personal relationships. The students' need for affiliation or relatedness is reflected in their motivation to spend time with peers, their own close friends, their attachment to their parents and their desire to have a positive relationship with their teachers. So, when you see the students in school, where the schools can provide caring and supportive interpersonal relationships, such students will have more of the positive academic attitudes and values, and they are more satisfied with the school. One research revealed that a key factor in students' motivation and achievement was their perception of whether they had a positive relationship with the teacher or not. Then achievement processes. What exactly do we mean by achievement processes? The current interest in motivation in school has been fueled by the cognitive perspective and an emphasis on discovering the most important processes involved in students' achievement. So, to understand the achievement processes, you can look at this slide. Achievement processes include intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, attribution, that is the reasons that you are giving for your success or the failure, mastery motivation and mindset, feelings of self-efficacy, goal setting, planning and self-monitoring, expectations of the teachers, expectations from yourself, and then values and purpose. So, now let us understand some of these processes in this module. I think all of you are aware what is this intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. Extrinsic motivation involves doing something to obtain something else, that is, it is a means to an end. It is influenced by external incentives like rewards and punishments. The behavioral perspective emphasizes the importance of extrinsic motivation in achievement, whereas the humanistic and cognitive approaches stress the importance of intrinsic motivation in achievement. Then what is intrinsic motivation? It involves the internal motivation to do something for its own sake, that is an end in itself. The current evidence strongly favors establishing a classroom climate in which students are intrinsically motivated to learn. We can understand intrinsic motivation from 4 different categories: self-determination and personal choice. Second one is optimal experiences and flow. Third one is interest, and fourth one is cognitive engagement and self-responsibility. We all know that some parents use the intrinsic rewards, some parents use the extrinsic rewards. In one study, children had higher intrinsic motivation in maths and science from 9 to 17 years of age when their parents engaged in task intrinsic practices, that is, encouraging the children's pleasure and engagement in learning, than when their parents engaged in task extrinsic practices, that is, providing external rewards and consequences depending on children's performances. Students are more motivated to learn when they are given the choice, when they become absorbed in challenges that match their skills and receive rewards that have informational value but are not used for control. Praise also can enhance students' intrinsic motivation because we are recognizing their effort. When goals are framed extrinsically, students show a lower level of independent motivation and lower persistence on achievement tasks. Now, another important factor that influences the motivation is self-determination and personal choice. One view of intrinsic motivation emphasizes self-determination. According to this, students want to believe that they are doing something because of their own will, not because of external success or rewards. The architect of self-determination theory, Richard Ryan and Edward Deci, referred to teachers who create circumstances for students to engage in self-determination as autonomy supportive teachers. Researchers have found that students' internal motivation and intrinsic interest in school tasks increase when students have some choice and some opportunities to take personal responsibility for their learning. In one study, teachers were encouraged to give the students more responsibility for their school programs, opportunities to set their own goals, plan how to reach the goals, and monitor their progress toward the goals. Compared with a control group, students in this intrinsic motivation or self-determination group had higher achievement gains and were more likely to graduate from the high school. Then what do you mean by optimal experiences and flow? Mihaly, who uses this term flow to describe optimal experiences in life. He has found that flow occurs most often when people develop a sense of mastery and are absorbed in a state of concentration while they engage in an activity. Moreover, he found that flow occurs when individuals are engaged in challenges they find neither too difficult nor too easy. Flow is most likely to occur in areas in which students are challenged and perceive themselves as having a high degree of skill. When student skills are high, but the activity provides little challenge, the result will be boredom. Similarly, when both the challenge and the skill levels are low, students feel apathy. And when students face a challenging task, but they don't believe that they have the adequate skills to master, they experience anxiety. So, this can be understood from the diagram that has been shown in the slide. So, this is the figure displays the outcomes of perceived levels of challenge and the skill. Then next important concept is interest. Interest is also related to the intrinsic motivation. There are two types of interest: individual interest, which is relatively stable, and situational interest, which is generated by specific aspects of a task activity. Individual interest might involve like mathematics ability a student brings to the course, such as long-standing success in the subject. Situational interest might involve how interesting a particular teacher makes a mathematics class. Now, what is extrinsic reward and intrinsic motivation? Though external rewards can be useful in changing the behavior, in some situations rewards can undermine learning. In a classic study, students who already had a strong interest in art and did not expect a reward spent more time drawing than the students who also had a strong interest, but they knew that they would be rewarded for drawing. So, classroom rewards can be useful to some extent. The two uses are as an incentive to engage in tasks in which the goal is to control the student's behavior and to convey information about mastery. When rewards are offered that convey information about mastery, students' feelings of competence are likely to be enhanced. Rewards which are used as incentives lead to perception that the student's behavior was caused by the external reward, not by the student's own motivation to be competent. However, negative feedback like criticism that carries information that students are incompetent can undermine intrinsic motivation, especially if students doubt their ability to become competent. Judy Cameron argues that rewards do not always decrease a student's intrinsic motivation. In her analysis of 100 studies, she found that verbal rewards like praising, giving a positive feedback can be used to enhance students' intrinsic motivation. She also concluded that when tangible rewards like gold stars and money were offered depending upon the task performance or given unexpectedly, intrinsic motivation was maintained. Now, developmental shifts in intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. So, many psychologists and educators emphasized that it is important for the children to develop great internalization and intrinsic motivation as they grow older. Researchers have found that as students move from early elementary school years to high school years, their intrinsic motivation decreases. In another research study, the biggest drop in intrinsic motivation and increase in extrinsic motivation occurred between 6th grade and 7th grade. Another study revealed as students moved from 6th through 8th grade, they increasingly said school was boring and irrelevant. However, in this study, intrinsically motivated did much better academically than those who were extrinsically motivated. Why the shift towards this extrinsic motivation as children move to the higher grades? So, this question might be occurring to you. One explanation is that school grading practices reinforce an external motivation orientation. That is what is happening in our school system. The grades will always act as the extrinsic reward. But as students get older, they lock into the increasing emphasis on grades and their internal motivation drops. Jacqueline Eccles and her colleagues have identified some specific changes in the school context that help to explain the decline in intrinsic motivation. Like they stated, middle and junior high schools are more impersonal, more formal, more evaluative and more competitive than elementary schools. Students compare themselves more with other students because they are increasingly graded in terms of relative performance on assignments and the other standardized tests. Proposing the concept of person-environment fit, Eccles argues that a lack of fit between the middle school or junior high environment and the needs of young adolescents produces increasingly negative self-evaluations and attitudes towards the school. Her research revealed that teachers became more controlling just at the time when adolescents are seeking more autonomy, and this teacher-student relationships become more impersonal when students are seeking more of the independence from their parents and need more support from other adults. At a time when adolescents are becoming more self-conscious, the more emphasis on grades and other competitive comparisons made the things worst. Then what teachers can do to make school more personal for students? So, one thing is we have to link their interest to the academic content. High schools often are even larger and more bureaucratic than middle schools. In such schools, a sense of community usually is undermined with little opportunity for students and teachers to get to know each other. As a consequence, what will happen? There is a distrust between students and teachers which is developed very easily, and there is little communication about students' goals and values. Such kind of an environment, such kind of context can harm the motivation of the students who are not doing well academically. So, teachers should think different ways as to how to make their school settings more personal, less formal and more intrinsically challenging. Teachers should also encourage the students to become intrinsically motivated. Similarly, teachers should create learning environments that promotes students' cognitive engagement and self-responsibility for learning. In many aspects of students' lives, both intrinsic and extrinsic motivation will work together, but both intrinsic and extrinsic motivation will also operate simultaneously in certain situations. So, a student may work hard in a course because she enjoys the content and likes learning about it, and also to earn a good grade. Now, the next important concept is about the attribution. It states that individuals are motivated to discover the underlying causes for their own performance and behavior. So, attributions are the perceived causes of outcomes. In one way, we can say students are like intuitive scientists. They are trying to explain the reason behind what is happening. So, the search for a cause or explanation is likely to be initiated when unexpected and important events end in the failure, like when a very good student gets a low grade. Some of the most frequently inferred causes of success and failure are ability, effort, task easiness or difficulty, luck, mood and help or hindrance from the others. To understand this attribution for a student's performance, we have to understand the Wiener's concept of 3 dimensions of causal attributions. The first dimension is locus, that is whether the cause is internal or external to the actor, stability, the extent to which the cause remains the same or changes, and controllability, the extent to which the individual can control that particular cause. So, we can, using this Wiener's model, we can give 8 possible explanations and give the explanation using this kind of a model. So, if you look at the slide, the different combinations could be internal, stable, uncontrollable. Under that particular dimension, the reasons the students give is low aptitude. Then internal, stable, controllable, the reason is they never study. Internal, unstable, uncontrollable, the reason they could give is the day they were taking the test, it is the sickness that they experienced. Internal, unstable, controllable, they did not study for this particular test. Suppose if we are looking at an external factor which is stable, uncontrollable, the school has tough requirements. External, stable and which is controllable, the students complain that the instructor is very biased and so I got less marks. External, unstable, uncontrollable, we attribute it to the bad luck. Then external, unstable, controllable, they attribute it to the friends, that friends have failed to help us. So, this explanation you can understand from this figure, which is giving you the combination of causal attributions and explanations for failure. Educational psychologists often recommend providing students with a series of achievement experiences in which modeling, information about strategies, practice and feedback are used to help them concentrate on the task at hand rather than worrying about failing. Second thing is cope with failures by retracing their steps to discover where the mistake has occurred, or by analyzing the problem to discover another approach, and attribute their failures to lack of effort rather than lack of ability. Now, the most important concept is mastery motivation. What is this mastery motivation? If a student is cognitively engaged and self-motivated, naturally that will be reflected in the adolescent's understanding of the mastery motivation. So, these children will also have a growth mindset that they can produce definitely positive outcome if they put forth the effort. So, they do not give up easily. Mastery motivation developmental psychologists like Henderson and Carol Dweck have found that children often show two different responses to difficult or challenging circumstances. Children who display mastery motivation are task oriented, that is, instead of focusing on their ability, they concentrate on learning the strategies and the process of achievement rather than the outcome. Those with a helpless orientation, they seem trapped by the experience of difficulty and they attribute their difficulty to lack of ability. They frequently say things like, I am not very good at this, even though they might earlier have demonstrated their ability through many successes. And once they view their behavior as failure, they often feel anxious and their performance will be more worsening. Another issue in motivation involves whether to adopt a mastery or a performance orientation. Children with a performance orientation are focused on winning rather than on an achievement, and they believe that success results from winning. Carol Dweck's most recent analysis of motivation for achievement stresses the importance of children developing a mindset which she defined as the cognitive view individuals develop for themselves. She concluded that individuals have one of the two mindsets, a fixed mindset in which they believe that their qualities are carved in stone and cannot change, or growth mindset in which they believe their qualities can change and improve through their effort. So, a fixed mindset is similar to a helpless orientation and a growth mindset is more like having mastery motivation. Dweck in her book on mindset argued that individuals' mindsets influence whether they will be optimistic or pessimistic, whether they will shape their goals and how hard they will strive to reach these goals and affect many aspects of their lives, including achievement and success in school and sports. Dweck says that mindsets begin to be shaped as children interact with parents, teachers and coaches who themselves have either a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. So, if a teacher has a growth mindset, if a coach has a growth mindset, children will also adopt that. If teacher or a coach or a parent has a fixed mindset, children will also imitate the same kind of the fixed mindset. Summary of the module. Motivation plays an important role for the achievement of the students, and there are different types of motivation which are intrinsic and extrinsic. We have to understand when intrinsic motivation operates, when the extrinsic motivation operates, but at the same time they are not mutually exclusive. Apart from this, we have to focus upon the attributions that the students give for their own success or for their own failures. Apart from all these things, the mastery performance, that is most important, where we have to aim at. Instead of focusing only on the reward, what is our experience, how much of the effort we are putting, what is that we are learning from a particular task, that influences your mastery of the task. And then finally, and the most important thing is the growth mindset.